Alright guys, good morning. It is September, I forget, but it doesn't matter. The one thing that does matter is that right now it's actually about like 1 week-ish, give or take, since I got back from California. We spent like a week in Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, San Diego, all that stuff. I didn't really include it on this channel. I talked about it a little bit on Instagram. I did like all the fancy, cool photos and all this stuff, but I don't think that really you guys care that much. You just want to see like, Igor, how do you train? How do you eat? And then how do you more training and more eating and just, keep doing that indefinitely. But the problem is, as you guys know, when it comes to travel, it's usually kind of hard to lose weight, let alone not even gain weight, which on a contest prep, especially in my case where I've only got 60-ish days left, yeah, that's not the best time for it. You're eating out for like 90% of your meals, Chick-fil-A, Shake Shack. Yeah, it gets kind of difficult. And I did do my best to kind of stay on track. Number one, I did really strict intermittent fasting. Pretty much every day I wouldn't eat until like 3, 4, in some cases 5 p.m. That way it's almost kind of like a savings account because you've saved up the calories for later in the day. And when I wasn't doing that, I was pretty much surviving off of like bagged tuna, Monster energy drinks, coffee, and apples, which I stole from the downstairs hotel lobby. That's pretty much it. That being said, I gotta be honest, when I did get back, and I saw my weight creep up back into the mid 180s, going as high as like 186. It kind of freaked the fuck out of me because I was thinking like, Igor, you just, in like 1 week of fun and travel, boom, you just undid like 2 weeks of progress. You actually saw my weekly weight loss rate was like, boom, 1.8, 1.9, 2, and then it's like 0.13 or something. Yeah, 60-ish days out from a competition. Don't exactly have that luxury and it freaked out. So this last week, I fucking just bit the bullet in terms of dietary adherence, even a bit of extra cardio, just doing everything I can to possibly not just get back on track, but in addition, even like overdo it a little bit to make up for, the last week or so. And yeah, so the last few days have actually been relatively good in weight. I think I'm back on track, but let's see what it looks like right now. Ah, thank fucking God. Okay, guys, we're good. Back on track, baby. What the fuck am I doing?
Riverside, motherfucker.
Alright, guys, Physique update 60 days out. Let's go. The footage you guys are seeing on screen right now is from my most recent pull workout. So if you notice that my back and biceps especially are like, damn, looking pretty damn good, looking a bit bigger, a little bit more pumped up than usual. Yeah, there's a little bit of a reason why. Again, body weight is around 181 pounds, and the estimated, keyword being estimated, body fat percentage is somewhere around the 13% mark, at least according to the body analyzer, the scale that I personally use and have been using for like the last two or 3 years now. And by the way, guys, as always, if you guys are interested in the scale, you can actually find a link and discount code for, I believe it's 60% off in the description box below. But besides that, guys, yeah, it's, I gotta be honest, it's looking pretty damn good. I don't want to blow my own horn, and in the past, sometimes I am a little bit like, cautious or humble with my physique updates, but this time, fuck it, I do like the way this looks. A couple of things I do want to point out. Number one, this pose right here, the side chest, this one, at least in this footage, I don't know if it's the lighting, I don't know if it's the pump, I don't care. It looks pretty damn good, at least better than in previous years, I might even say, especially in the biceps. And again, this might be due to the pump from that day's workout, but my arms have always been decent in size and in circumference, but genetically, I've never really had very peaked biceps. They kind of just look like these large cylinders, but they've never had like these little mountains that some guys have sitting on their actual arms. And to kind of see that to a certain extent in this pose, yeah, in addition, the chest also does seem to be popping out a little bit more than usual, than at least in the past, which is good because number one, this was a back day, so there's not much, if any, of a pump happening in the chest. And also, I spent like the better part of 2019, earlier this year, working on my chest, training my chest for strength, trying to go for a lifetime PR on the bench press, which I did hit a few months ago. So to actually see that, maybe, paying some dividends now that I've actually started to reduce the subcutaneous fat on the actual pectoral muscle. It's minor, but I think it is there, and I do like seeing that. Next up from the back, as you guys know with my back, it's always been just ridiculous because for some reason, just, you know, due to genetic factors or whatever reason, the body fat distribution is completely different. You know, from the front, I'm like 60 days out. From the back, I'm like 3 weeks out. It's like a 4% difference in body fat. I don't know why that is, but fuck it. I'm not complaining, especially like around the rear deltoids. This has always been kind of like a strong point for me. Like you can actually see the individual separation between like the actual deltoids, like the lateral, posterior, and anterior deltoids actually like inserting on my frame. I do like seeing that. And then moving on to the vacuum, guys, you know me, I love this pose, especially because this is one thing which us, you know, natural guys and especially guys who aren't that massive, this is one area where it does feel kind of nice because so many of these massive guys, these massive IFBB pro bodybuilders who are like 300 pounds at like 5'9" and like negative 8% body fat, yeah, they're fucking enormous, but they've also got like 36-inch waist. You know what I'm talking about. They call them like pregnant bodybuilders or like the growth hormone gut, or I don't know what the hell causes it, but there's no way they could hit, you know, a vacuum like this, or let alone someone like, you know, Chris Bumstead, which is like on a whole other level, which is why I'm a big fan of his physique and the classic physique division in general. That is definitely something that I like to see. I'm a big fan of like the more so classic, you know, aesthetic 1960s, vintage 1970s bodybuilder poses, and to be able to do so even more so now that I'm getting leaner, I definitely do like seeing this. Overall, guys, physique is looking good. It is on track, and I'm happy with this, especially at 60 days out. I would qualify this as like, this is officially, in my opinion, what lean looks like. I'm not shredded yet. That's the next goal, but I'm no longer like, not even like athletic or average or, you know, YouTube fat, you know, with YouTube's crazy body dysmorphic opinions on what's considered fat, but I'm looking like, yeah, this is a lean physique. The next step would probably be to like, okay, now you know, you look good. Now it's time to get all the minor details. Now it's time to go like, you know, okay, from, hey, I can see the separation in my muscles, but now it's time to start seeing the little stuff, the nitty gritty. Now it's time to start seeing striations. You know, now it's time to start getting like vascularity in some of the cool places besides just the regular places, like, you know, like your forearms and biceps. Now it's time to start seeing all these little minor detail muscle groups, like your serratus anterior. When you start to really see that, see those little razor sharp diamonds coming in, you know, just under your armpits or under your pecs, that's when you really start to look good. That's when you're no longer lean. That is when you can officially say, at least in my opinion, for me, shredded, and that's the next goal, and I'm really happy to be working towards that. I wonder what today's video is going to be about. That's right, guys, welcome to my official 2019 competition prep battle plan, or battle strategy, or insert some other super overly intense epic name here, because calling this video my 2019 macronutrient and calorie calculation breakdown video, that doesn't exactly sound that exciting for the YouTube titles. So when I started my competition prep last month, I got a lot of questions or comments from you guys saying like, Igor, okay, that's awesome, that's great, it seems like you're doing things a little differently this time with this low carb diet, you're doing it kind of extra fast, only 90 days, that's awesome, but no, like seriously, what the hell are you actually doing? You know, you want to know the good stuff, the calories, the macros, like actually getting into the nitty gritty of my diet, so that way that you guys can kind of compare and contrast and maybe do something a little bit similar. And that's what this video is going to be about today. We have a few things to talk about. First things first, total daily energy expenditure, or as some other people refer to as your maintenance calories. These are essentially the, you know, in a perfect world, if you were to eat X amount of calories, in my case 2,700, your body would not change. It would not get any leaner, it wouldn't get any smaller, at the same time it wouldn't get any bigger. You're not bulking, you're not cutting, you're, for most people, kind of just staying the same. In my case, I know this not just from like formulas and online calculators and all these things where you plug in your stats, like your sex, your height, your age, all these things. No, I know this most importantly, the most accurate source from personal experience. I know that at least when I started about a month ago, when I was a little bit more bulked up, kind of like in the low 190s, high 180s, my maintenance calories is around 2,700. And by the way, guys, before I proceed any further, I do want to mention, yes, that is kind of low. Some of you guys out there watching this video, you might think like, that doesn't make any sense. Igor, I am shorter than you. I am physically smaller than you, at least in terms of like actual weight, kind of like the inputs into these, metabolic calculation, estimation formulas, and yet I could eat more than that and maintain my weight. Your calories at a maintenance level seem like my calories to diet down. What's going on? Is your metabolism slow? Actually, yeah, to a certain extent, it kind of is. Now, there's multiple reasons as to why this is. It's kind of hard to explain, and it's really, really hard to pinpoint it, but in my opinion, it's probably due to just, number one, subconscious activity level. Not like conscious, kind of like sports and working out, but just due to, on a daily basis, I'm not necessarily, besides exercise, I'm not necessarily the most active individual. And because of this, something called NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, it's a little bit lower than perhaps the average individual, and thus it kind of brings down your natural metabolism, in my case, maybe like 100-200 calories. And another thing, which I don't want to touch upon too much because it is a little, it's kind of like, it's a little wishy-washy, genetics. I do believe that to a certain extent, there is somewhat of a genetic factor at play. I mean, I don't want to go to the extreme. I've seen some people out there, they believe that like fat loss is 100% genetics, and if you were born fat, your parents are fat, you are screwed, you will never get below 20% body fat. Other people out there say like, no, it's bullshit, it's just an excuse, you and me are the exact same regardless of our DNA. No, guys, it's not that black and white. Like most things in life, as a nice compromise, it's kind of shades of gray. I've had the privilege of coaching hundreds of people over the last few years, and I've seen individuals, not just kind of like, I kind of have a hunch. No, I've seen their weight data. I've seen their nutritional data in MyFitnessPal on a daily basis for months, and it's just like something here, if you go by the standard methodology of metabolism calculation, something does not make sense. It's off by just a little bit, 200-300 calories, and in many cases, I think there is sort of a secret underlying genetic factor. But that being said, does this really matter? No, because there's not much you can do about it. One thing which I think really applies here, and just more so in the grand philosophical sense of life in general, is there's a quote which I kind of like to remember. It's change what you can't accept and accept what you can't change. And in my case, my naturally, somewhat slower than average or slower than expected metabolism due to subconscious activity on a daily basis or genetic factors predetermined before birth. These are perfect examples of things you cannot change. So what do? You plug it in and you move on and you build your strategy around that, as opposed to sitting here and whining about like, oh, this guy has a faster metabolism than me, that's not fair. Nobody gives a shit, least of all the judges at my Men's Physique show. Either way, guys, moving on from that 7-minute rant. Calories, in my case, I started this competition prep about a month ago at 2,200 calories, which comes out to a 500 calorie deficit. Obviously, as you guys know, the primary stimulus of fat loss. Also, that's another thing I want you guys to understand, especially those kind of newer to my channel over the last year or so. You might see a lot of stuff in the world of fitness related to fat loss coming from, oh, it's from hormones, or no, it's from eating. That's not what you eat or how much you eat. It's how clean you eat, or it's about some super fancy, high intensity exercise routine. You know what? All those things are great, and in some ways they all do play a role. But at the end of the day, the calorie deficit, how much less you eat than actually what you require to maintain your body, that is the primary driver of fat loss. That has always been the primary driver of fat loss. Calorie deficit is the fucking king. End of story. I know probably like 80% of you are like, yeah, Igor, duh, we know that. But for the other 20% of you, next up, protein. 180 grams is my current target. Don't worry, guys. So all the people out there saying like, you're not even at the magic number. At minimum, 1 gram of protein per pound. Relax. Number one, it's not that crazy. The scientific evidence kind of talks about an ideal protein range. Not some magic number, but a range. I mean, there are plenty of examples of individuals, especially I've seen a lot of people out there who are vegans or vegetarians. Obviously, it's kind of harder for them to get as much protein. They would eat as low as like 0.8, maybe even like 0.7. I've seen even some cases like 0.6, 0.65 grams of protein per pound of body weight while dieting, in some cases for bodybuilding shows, and they have looked absolutely, fantastic. So don't worry, take everything with a grain of salt. It's not the end of the world if I'm eating like 20 grams of protein less than what is sort of, to some people, considered the standard. So far, everything is pretty much identical to what I have done in previous years. This is where things get a little different this time around in 2019. My target fat is as high as 100 grams, which if you do the math, this comes out to the remaining calories. Once you take this, you subtract the calories coming from protein and fat, this comes out to approximately 145 grams of carbs. This is the lowest I have gone ever in terms of carbohydrates when it comes to a competition prep. By the way, I know that some of you guys really do like percentages, so let me just include that for you. My protein, technically it's like 33 point something, whatever. I'm just gonna round it up to, this is approximately 35%. In this case, my fat is 40%, and my carbohydrates, the lowest they have ever been at 25%. It's interesting, these numbers are actually the exact same, just reversed or switched as opposed to what I have done in previous years. That's the biggest change, where the energy is coming from. How much actual energy I'm consuming, that really hasn't changed at all. How much protein I'm consuming, that hasn't changed from previous years, because those things are kind of standard. It's the fat and carbohydrate amounts, that's what's kind of switched around a little bit this year, which is kind of what I'm experimenting with, and to be honest, so far, it's been going pretty damn good. But here's where things get a little interesting. It's time to make some changes. I have lost a decent amount of weight since I started the competition prep, and definitely since I started dieting in general, back in June at the end of my bulk, back when I was like well over 200 pounds. Since then, I'm a smaller individual, just physically in terms of weight, and because of that, to a certain extent, my metabolism has come down. And this isn't just kind of like wishy-washy, I think so. No, you can actually try this out yourself. Guys, if you want right now, go and check out one of those like online metabolic calculators or like TDEE estimators or whatever. Put in certain stats in terms of height, weight, whatever, and then look at what it spits out as a maintenance number. Now, repeat the exact same process, but this time decrease it by like 10, 15, maybe even 20 pounds, and then do this again and see what number it's going to spit out. Chances are it's probably going to be a little bit lower, probably by a solid 150, maybe even in some cases, depending on how much weight you lost, 200 calories. Your metabolism has literally slowed down because you're literally a smaller individual than you were, at the beginning of your weight loss journey, or in my case, competition prep. Now, in my case, the good news is I haven't actually had any problems with this just yet. I have not hit any fat loss plateau in terms of my rate of fat loss. When I actually stick to these numbers, stick to the diet, it's still going pretty good. But I don't have the luxury of waiting around until it's too late. I don't have, months left. I've got 60 days, give or take, from the time of this video until I have to step on stage and be the leanest that I ever have, or I literally am gonna come like 7th place, and let's be honest, most of you guys are gonna roast me in the comment section. I don't wanna end up in a diet, a weight loss plateau, and then be like, well, maybe spend another 1 or 2 weeks and really make sure. No, I don't have time for that. I wanna get ahead of the curve, and we're gonna be actually cutting right now already 2,100 calories. Now, this isn't that big of a difference. This isn't that huge of a deal. And this is another thing which I want you guys to understand. No matter what you're doing, if you're just dieting to look a little bit better, feel a little bit healthier, you want to look good on the beach, whatever it is you are doing, if you're doing it for chances are longer than a month or two, probably a good idea to start making minor modifications, and minor is the key word. You don't have to just quadruple your cardio. You don't have to slash your calories in half. No, as your body gets a little bit smaller, your metabolism gets a little bit slower, you just have to, adjust for that, that 1, maybe 150 calorie decrease. And as your metabolism comes down, your nutrition comes down as well. That way you preserve that calorie deficit. Now, how did I actually break this down into my nutrition? Once again, guys, my protein I am keeping the same. That's pretty much a constant throughout my entire prep. Fat is down just a little bit to 95 grams. Carbohydrates, because again, guys, low carb diet is the name of the game this time around. This is down to 130 grams. This is what I have done. I took out a little bit of additional food out of my diet to ensure that I'm preserving that calorie deficit. And even though I haven't hit a fat loss plateau yet, thank God, chances are by me doing this, it's not gonna happen. But there is still one more factor at play, kind of like this secret thing which kind of like envelops all of this, because all of this is under the umbrella of intermittent fasting. So remember guys, I mentioned a few minutes ago how when it comes to fat loss, calorie deficit is the king. It is the primary stimulus of fat loss, and without it, it's not going to happen. But there are still other factors at play. Intermittent fasting is one of those factors. It's not going to do the job for you. It's not going to replace a calorie deficit, but when used in conjunction with a good diet in terms of calories, calorie deficit, macros, all this stuff, it can make the process not just a little bit faster, but also in my case, definitely a little bit easier. Now, so people always ask me, like, Igor, what's the best way of doing intermittent fasting? How do you personally do it? And in my case, I aim for approximately an 8-hour feeding window. That means that I am fasting for 16 hours out of the day, including the time that I am asleep, and for approximately 8 hours. To be honest, sometimes I go even a little bit less, maybe 7, in some cases even 6. But to keep things simple, at maximum, an 8-hour feeding window is usually my go-to. The way I have personally structured for me is I start eating at around 3 p.m. and then I am done at around 11 p.m. This 11 p.m., that is the biggest reason why I decided to go with this structure. Guys, you have to ask yourself, what kind of a person are you? Are you the kind of individual that's absolutely starving, earlier in the day? Because if that's the case, maybe you should take this feeding window and push it back. Instead of doing 3 to 11, maybe it's a good idea to do maybe like 12 to 8 or maybe 1 to 9. That's not really the case for me. It's not that big of a deal. The first 2 or 3 weeks are kind of hard getting into intermittent fasting, but once I do, me not eating before 3 p.m., not that big of a deal. But I suck at night. I don't know what you want to call me. I'm like a friggin' midnight fridge rat. I'm just like something happens at night, and if you ask me to like eat from 12 to 8 and then go to sleep at 1 and then pretty much spend the last 5 hours of the day not having a single piece of food, get the fuck out of here. It's not gonna happen. I don't know what it is for me, but even like in bed, I just like to kind of like nibble on snacks or something. Yeah, I've always been that way. I'm just kind of like a night snacker, a nighttime guy. Now, that's okay as long as you understand that. Don't lie to yourself and sit there like, yeah, I can do it. No food after 6 p.m.? No worries. Fuck that. I know myself. Know what you're good at and know what you aren't. And this, yeah, I'm definitely not that great at it. And that's why I choose to do intermittent fasting in a 3 to 11, 8-hour window protocol. So think of this as kind of like what you eat and most importantly, how much you eat. And this is when you eat. You can't simply rely, in many cases, you could, but I don't advise simply relying on what or how clean it is or when. No, but if you do all these things together, it's not just one specific tactic, but it's multiple tactics combined into one overall big picture nutrition strategy. At least in my personal experience, that is where you hit that kind of magic sweet spot for long-term, consistent, stable, and not grotesquely difficult, starving fat loss. And yeah, guys, so far 1 month in, as you can tell by the physique update earlier in this video, I think it's working pretty well.